don't know why the God in you reveals the fate of the everlasting truth. The world around you disappears, the fall of men and honesty in fear. Rule the fate, be betrayed in a godless demise. Now rise up to the sky with no chains on your mind. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this rendition of Thunderdome Metal Reviews. I am Tracey Newport. With me, as always, are my brothers in arms, Ben Lindsay, Gabe Cooper, and Dr. David Pizza. How y'all doing today, gentlemen?
Got the power.
Yeah.
Ready to storm the castle.
So much power.
I'm ready
The
for
wall of skulls.
I'm ready for you to storm the castle as we do it listening to this wonderful power metal album of Wall of Skulls by Brainstorm.
Yes.
Go for it, Gabe.
All right. So this is Wall of Skulls, released 9/17/2021. It's the 13th studio album by this outfit. It's on AFM Records. It was recorded in Greenman Studios in Arnsberg, Germany. The keyboards were recorded at Gate Studios, produced by Sebastian Sabe Leverman. Runtime of 44 minutes, 38 seconds. On the drums is Dieter Bernhardt. On the guitars and vocals, Torsten Ihlenfeld. On the guitars and vocals, doing the backing vocals, Milan Longaric. On the lead vocals, Andy B. Frank. And on the bass, Antonio Yeva.
Thanks, Hildesheim. 13 albums? I was like,
yeah, that's a lot of albums.
I know, because I was like, I wonder how many. Oh my God, when I opened it on iTunes and saw those albums. Also, literally from like, I don't know, the second note of this was like, Tracey. I mean, I sort of knew just looking at the cover, but the minute he started singing.
You didn't get on that first guitar intro? Like,
I did. That's what I'm saying. The minute he started playing, I sort of knew, and then the guy started singing, and it just went all the way. It wasn't quite Diggy Diggy Doug, but you know.
No, this kicks the shit out of that.
Oh, this is.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll let you guys go first. So, what were your thoughts on this album? Because I'm just gonna say, after hearing this album the first time, I was like, "Fuck yes." And I knew it was going to end up high. I just didn't know where it was going to end up. But
I was amazed by how good it was. And because because initially I thought this is going to be another one of those throwback metal bands that is trying to recapture the power metal vibe and everything. And I guess in some ways they are. But, these guys have been doing it, as you can tell by 13 albums. These guys have been around for a long, long time. So this is not a band that's been trying to ape this sound for the last 4 years. So when I saw that they had 13 albums, it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. It honestly reminded me a lot of Primal Fear, whom I'm a big fan of. So yeah, this was a lot of times power metal is needlessly silly. And I never felt that this was needlessly silly. Are there some like over the top power metal tropes? Yes, but it wasn't like Diggy Diggy Doug levels of like, haha, look at us and laugh. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, it does take itself pretty seriously. And after 13 albums, you'd hope they were taking themselves seriously. Definitely well played. Not something that I have a lot of experience with. And not something I'm looking for pretty much ever, but it wasn't entirely unpleasant. I have to say they can write a hook. It's quite over the top, but that's sort of par for the course, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it is par for the course, over the top.
David, as the person I'm trying to convert into power metal, how did you feel about this?
It was all right. I didn't. You've worn me down a little bit with things like Unleash the Archers that I think are quite good, and there's a little of me, obviously, because of Maiden and Judas Priest. There's some receptors you can link onto there, but I don't know. It's hard, man. Just to go from Entombed to this was quite jarring in terms of just like, one, Swedish people are murdering people in the desert, and then suddenly like an elf and I were trying to like climb a castle wall. I gotta give it to these guys for committing, because Jesus, 13 albums of this. And it is darker than a lot of German power metal, I have to say, like, because some of it is, I guess it's a different way of saying what Ben just said. It's just so cheesy. I can't even, like, I just can't. I at least could with this album, and did. So, and it had its moments where it was pretty catchy. But also, I just listened to Diggy Diggy Dug. Like, that album was such a mind fuck that in comparison, this, seemed like a very serious, earnest album.
Well, and something
And
that
you
we've
and you
said,
wrote to it.
and something that we've said about this genre and these throwback metal bands, a lot of it really is heavily, because at this point, if you're going to be in this kind of band, I expect you to be able to lay down a blistering solo and check. The guitar work on here is excellent, but it really relies on the vocalist. And this vocalist, while definitely not in the, Tate, Halford, or Dickinson, realm, is quite good enough. He's actually really, really good. And he never, to my listening, he never tried to do anything that his voice wasn't capable of doing. Which, again, if they're 13 albums in, and assuming that he's been in the band for a long time or whatever, I appreciate somebody who knows their limitations and stays within them.
They released their first album in '97, it looks like, according to Spotify. So they've been doing this for 24 years, which is crazy to think, because I think that's 2 years. That's 2 years earlier than Macedon, and I think they got 3 more albums out than them.
Well, they
That's
are much
more
better
old
than
school.
Mastodon.
Yeah. No, it's more like how Maiden used to be, or Priest, right? Like, they used to just crank that shit out, or fucking Sabbath. Like, that's just how it was. And so they're doing it a bit more old school. This, I assume they wrote, produced, and released in the pandemic. I mean, we're definitely so far in now that it all has to be not shit that was like they put on the back stove waiting for the pandemic to end. I think
Well,
we're
their
past
last
most of
album
that.
they released was in 2018. So I think they might have been actually trying to wait it out. I didn't dig into that
Yeah, I
and
don't
see
know.
if they were
I have no idea.
Wouldn't either.
trying to get out or not. But no, this was a very pleasant surprise to find. I kind of found it late, early December last year. And I was like, oh shit, this is good. And then my 60-hour week, as I mentioned previously, of just spamming all that album of the year stuff. This album was just, for me, was just so much damn fun.
It is fun. I will agree with you there.
And
because there's no stakes to this, at least in my listening to it, and it was just something that you could just put on and enjoy.
yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, the week when I was making it, at least, was a pretty dark week, and so this was kind of an escape for me, I think. So I think it kind of really ratcheted that segment of my brain as well. And there's another album on that list that's very similar, the Black Soul Horde or whatever, that's very similar in the vein of this as well. Like, those 2 albums were very low stakes, enjoyable albums. Like, they weren't Macedon's Hushed and Grim, where you're digging through some feelings on that. You're just like, all right, I'm gonna kill some fucking dwarves today. Just carry on.
With the lava snakes.
Exactly.
Have you seen their other album covers? I was just looking at them. Oh my god, it's a lot. The montage of all of
I
them.
assume that they are at least this ludicrous.
At least some actually more so.
They all look like a perfect picture for a D&D campaign. Like, you're like,
totally.
they're like, we're going to do a D&D campaign. How would you describe it? This. And
I mean, role playing is big in Germany, as is in a lot of places, and like, their commitment to an imagined version of the Middle Ages is this deep and profound. Just piles of skulls. We can get into all that later. This is not the time to talk about the Black Death in Nuremberg.
For sure. All right, so shall we transition to songs?
I guess let's do it.
Unless Tracey wants to perform some more.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants that. I'll let you guys have the enjoyment of going first. Or
I
before me?
mean, you know, as Ben said, it's a fun thing. You just put it and let it rip. None of them stood out a whole lot. Maybe Glory Disappears is so ludicrous that it's just Where Ravens
That
Fly.
song makes no sense.
The song makes no sense at all. And Where Ravens Fly is pretty cool, you know. But most of it, it's, you know, this is an album I would never like, man, I got to hear Turn Off the Light. I just got to. I got to hear End of My. This is an album that I, for whatever reason, maybe because I was trying to convince Tracey I care. I don't know. I would just like pop it on, listen to all of it. So, you know, I concede it is. I would much rather listen to this than Converge
That's for sure.
any day of the week.
That is very true. At least that one Converge album. I agree with David. This is not something that I would like pick songs out of to just listen to. I would just put the album on and let it rip. I will give them credit that the opening instrumental doesn't suck, which is not always the case. But yeah. And then I was like, oh, Stigmatized, Shadows Fall. I wonder if that's got anything to do with Shadows Fall, the band. If it was there, I didn't hear it. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, just for something that is roughly 50 minutes long, I would just put it on and let it play.
So I thought there were maybe two songs that stood out a lot to me, which were Escape the Silence and Turn Off the Light. But other than that, most of it's just okay, or not really interested in coming back to it. My Dystopia is interesting because the opening riff sounds a lot like Deutschland by Rammstein. David, you hear that? Yeah, you heard that too. It's unfortunate that it came out a couple years after that.
Yes, I was like, huh. Yes, that absolutely struck me. And then I began thinking about the pathos of just piles of medieval skulls. So that's maybe where that. Yes, that occurred to me as well. But obviously the
piles and piles of bodies and
there's so many bodies over and over and over. But you know, you gotta admit it's fun, right? You had fun. Did you have fun on the ride or nah?
Yeah, there was a little bit of fun. It was like it was a little bit like one of those, carnival rides, those haunted house type carnival rides.
Yeah, you've been Oktoberfest, one of those shitty rides that just, hopefully
there's
you're
lots
too
of those
drunk to
shitty rides
notice.
at Oktoberfest, and
that's like all it is.
Lots of Italians and Japanese people falling off of them.
100%. And me and the other students I was with.
I was too busy drinking beer.
We were doing both those things. There was a night where I had 6 liters. No, it was 8 liters, which even for me is a gigantic quantity, like 2 gallons. And we went on rides. That was a terrible choice. But anyway, good times. That was also the fall of 1996. Thanks,
Did you ruin
Germany.
Somebody's Oktoberfest.
No, I was the only one who didn't spew. I have a stomach of iron. It was like when I was on that ferry from Dar to Zanzibar, everybody was spewing. I was the only one who didn't. I don't know. I'm not a great person or redeemable in many ways, but my ability to not vomit is legend. So take that as you will. I'm not saying I've never vomited, but it's usually not from motion or alcohol.
Or motion and alcohol.
Or even that. No, it's usually like, oh God, I've eaten,
So Tracey, what songs do you like on here?
Yeah.
All of them. Like, I enjoy all these songs on here. I've really enjoyed this album. I mean, it's number 5 for last year.
Yeah, one would hope that you enjoyed it if that was that high.
It's number 5. It's only at B.
It's out of hundreds. I want to remind our listeners and viewers, there are thousands of albums.
500 of 3,000.
This is the top 1% of 1%.
Indeed. All right, time to rate it.
There were. Now I got to correct you guys and give you correct information. There were 102
on your list.
Well,
that's reduced, right? Wasn't the one the previous year bigger than that?
It was 102 before made cuts, and or it's like 105 for made cuts, and I cut 5 off of it because those albums sucked. After I went back and heard them, it's like nope.
Right. So all the albums you listened to last year, there were 102 albums that were in the running for the top 25 that you had to go back and re-listen to.
Mm-hmm. And this was number 5 for it. So I'm going to give this a legendary album, give it legendary status.
Of course you are.
If I have a kid, he's 6-year-old, I'm like, here you go, son. Here's some power metal.
Nice.
Grandfather, tell me a story.
Grandfather,
Tell me a story.
who were those men?
We're gonna have to
Who
do
are
that
those
album at some
dwarves?
Who were those dwarves? We definitely need to do some Manowar.
point. We do, yeah.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. I thought it was a solid album. I'm going to give it a B minus. It was fun. It was. I would listen to it again, but I mean, it's not definitely not a like go to listen or anything. It, like I said, it does remind me of Primal Fear, and I really like Primal Fear quite a lot. So I will go back and listen to some of their other albums. But you know, this was the popcorn at the movie.
I'm in the exact same space. The fun ride. I'd maybe do it again, especially if I were intoxicated. But it isn't. I'm not going to play it for my 7-year-old as a primer as to what metal sounds like, because I fed her a proper diet, Tracey, of Slayer from early on in Lamb of God, because I'm not trying to raise a maniac who wants to storm a castle. Actually, that is what I'm raising. Anyway,
So
retract
this is
it.
perfect for her.
It kind
This
of
is
might
perfect.
be. I don't know. She kind of liked Diggy Duggy. What have you done, Tracey? You're stealing my child from me. Anyway, B minus.
The truth comes out. Just accepting her into power metal.
It's a B
fandom.
minus. Curse you.
I think I'm going to say this is for hardcore fans only of power metal, not necessarily of the band, but of power metal. Because I dug it, but I probably wouldn't go back to it. I could basically handle it for listening to this week, but that's probably the extent of it, unfortunately. Sorry, Tracey.
I know not everybody's gonna buy in on it.
Well, you gave it an A. What did that pull it up to? B something, right?
It came out at an average of an 84.
See?
Look,
That's
I don't pick
fine.
albums for everybody to enjoy. I pick albums that I enjoy.
Of
Big
course,
albums
of
to
course.
punish us.
Yeah, there's some albums he does pick to punish us for sure.
This will
Just
make
you,
them
man.
cry.
Yeah. Oh shit! What are we doing
Speaking of
next,
things,
Tracy?
yes, I was going to say, speaking of things that
Speaking
make
of
men
next-
cry.
Next, we are now entering into Gabe land with his first official pick for Thunderdomes as we look at the Red Chords Clients. I'm sure
Yeah,
David's
that
a
album
fan
cover.
of this.
You had to start with this, didn't you, Gabe? This album cover, when I looked it up, I'm like, oh no. And then I read about, well, we'll get into how it's a theme album when we actually review it.
Yes. Yeah.
Looking
So
forward.
join us as we go from power metal to whatever the fuck this is. And,
It's mid northeastern deathcore. That's what it
exactly.
is.
Yes. I mean,
it's mid 2000 northeastern
you
deathcore.
run the tease, Tracy,
That's how Boston was living in 2008 or whatever, 7, 8, 9.
for sure. But and you get Gabe's first official pick as a member of the Thunderdome Metal Reviews crew, and we'll catch you then.